Since you were smart enough to bring your DP, I'd love to ask, where did you guys actually get to shoot, and what were you shooting on? Because I feel like there must have been at least a filter or something, because it does have an aged look to it. I wonder if that was in the edit or where that came from.
So we did this film as part of our USC sponsored thesis class. So it went through a very arduous process of selection. There were 12 projects that were pitched, and there were 3 were selected, and we were one of the group that were selected. With this film, we shot it at USC over the course of 9 shooting days. Over the span of 3 weeks, and it was shot last fall of 2021. And we shot the film on Sony F5, which is like the standard camera for the USC thesis class. I didn't know about filter. I think Eris can speak about it.
So we shot it on the Sony F5. It's the only choice we have. So we did put in like a Blackmagic quarter filter in there.
Okay.
That kind of just make the skin softer. Probably like, because you were talking about like aging. Do you mean like it looks more like a period piece, or like?
Just more the feel. It felt a little softer than I imagined it would be.
Yeah. That's probably the filter.
Yeah, must
and
be.
also the lighting too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the film was set in the early 2000s, and then in the same time where Lady Bird was set, there was a kind of a nostalgia of that reflects upon our childhood. Growing up, I was born in 1995, and the childhood where I was like at Wei-Lai's age, it's about the early 2000s. So from production design to the kind of a look, it kind of evokes to a kind of a nostalgia and then a homage to the childhood that we went through.
Yeah, definitely like the house and all the location we pick, we kind of like choose something looks like early 2000. Like production design team did a lot to like make it looks like early 2000. So that definitely helped.
And also the fashion choices with what they were wearing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious as far as the cast. Where did you find little Wei-Lai? He's so. I don't know. He's got an affectionate to him. He's quite adorable.
Right. Yeah. So casting was very, very hard for this film, but it was like a very integral part of how the movie is going to turn out. Because a story like this is very close to life. It is very down to earth, and given the lifelike quality to it. I mean, and it's also, by the way, it's like a comedy, like coming of age story. So in a sense, it needs to more remind us of life than reminds of watching a movie. So with that in mind, we went for authenticity when we cast, and then we basically exhausted all the child casting agencies in LA, and then we found and we did a lot of auditions, like 40 of the auditions, I guess, through a LA child acting academy called Star Factory, and then basically they did like trainings for young Chinese or like Asian American kids in general, and then we found our cast, Arthur there, which is very, very lucky. Yes, because it's very, very hard to find if we went through the traditional process of going through the breakdown or backstage or just like posting casting calls. It's very, very hard to get those.
Yeah, I think like the age and like he has to be Asian and he needs to speak Mandarin, like make a very narrow list for us. It's also his first time acting, right?
Yeah, it's his first time.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's his first time acting, so that was definitely really fun for him and us.
So I don't want to spoil too many scenes because it's short, but I love moments with food in your film and the family feel of it. It both helps in his character feeling alienated, but also, I don't want to give it away in the end, but that's how the closure happens. I'm curious the importance of food in the film, and then showcasing the food in a quite interesting way, showcasing that dinner aspect, that eating communally.
So this is a film about finding the grammars of love across generations, where we were losing touch with what our parents' generation were like, and they were losing their ability to communicate with us. We live in a world that's where children are growing estranged from their parents at a speed that no one really could imagine, because right now the world is so much radicalized and so much diaspora is going on. I grew up in China, but I went to high school in Singapore and I had college in the U.S. I constantly cross borders, and my parents were still in China as I was going on all these journeys in my life. So I really want to make this film to speak to my parents, and especially my dad, because of the way that world has become so polarized, and then we are having really different worldviews from our parents' generation. And with food, it just really reminds me of Ang Lee's Eat, Drink, Man, Women, where food is the unspoken language of communicating love. It is something that is so sort of baked into who we are, and it's such a deep, integral part of our culture. So in the film, basically the parents were making dumplings in the kitchen, and then they were eating dumplings in the end. That sort of builds a trajectory of an arc for them. When we don't understand what is the meaning behind food, we complain that, oh, my parents are not loving me. But towards the end, we get that, oh, the thing that I got every day is what my parents were ways of articulating their love. So with food, there were so many scenes and moments in the film that, because at the climax of it, basically it takes place at the restaurant where all the where all the food got spilled over, and then the idea was sort of there as well.
Because if you grow up in an Asian family, what do you want to eat? It's just a constant question from your parents. We spend a lot of time having a dinner together with family. The dinner runs to 2 hours, 3 hours all the time. It's kind of it's kind of a normal for all the Asian family to have 3-hour dinner every day. So it's definitely a huge part of the culture, which is partially why we're trying to make it cross.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. It's my grandparents were still in the deep south, the rural areas of China, and we have really, really lost how we would really communicate, other than the fact that every time I went back there, my grandma was asking me, what do you want to eat? Do you have enough clothes and everything? But it is I wish there could be more to the conversation, but what is left underneath is really all the love that is expressed through generations. They were sort of hidden underneath what's being asked with food, and whether you are okay or not, I think. But yeah,
it definitely comes across because it's powerful, and the moment you talked of, that's tragic. It's sad. I mean, you feel it in the characters. The way the father handles it in this film is very poignant and powerful. I'm curious, as far as that location, is that a real restaurant? Or you said you shot in USC?
It is.
Yeah. What was that experience like?
So I found the interior of that restaurant on an HBO APA Visionary shorts, and then we're just seeing what, because we did spend a lot of time scouting a lot of restaurants. We scout 10 plus restaurants, I guess. But the idea that kind of conveys the restaurant is kind of a character that conveys the sophistication of the culture that kind of wants to have face, but also there's something that's deeper, richer into it. And then there's also a climax of the film, so there's a kind of a grandeur, and then a kind of impression that it should be leaving on the audience. So basically we went to that restaurant, and then the restaurant was really nice, and then it's one of the nicest people that we worked with. The only thing about it is just they don't allow us to really shoot on weekends because that's their busiest time. And then the kids were like, they were like minors. And then with LA, like SAG rules that there needs to be a studio teacher who won't allow them to work longer than 3.5 hours on weekdays. So when these things come together, it's really, really hard because the restaurant don't let you shoot on weekends, and then kids are very hard to work on weekdays. So, yeah.
I just love the neon sign outside the restaurant with like the seafood, Top Island seafood. We go there at night and then we're just like in love with the location, like how cinematic it looks from outside. It's also a huge place, so we're only using like part of the restaurant because like they're still opening while we're filming, so that definitely create a lot of issues sound-wise for us too. But yeah, in general, it's a really good experience. Like people working there, like really supportive of us. So,
what did it mean to you, Robin, to get this film here at Bentonville, knowing that its mission is for diversity, is showcasing films that aren't always shown? What did you feel when you guys heard that you were going to be at this festival, and then to come out here obviously shows how much you want to be here and how important it is to you?
Yeah, I mean, we were elated when we were like, when we knew that Wei-Lai will be premiere here. It's our premiere. And then, I mean, one of the really big reference for this film is Minari, which was a story took place in Arkansas. And it's just like, when I saw Minari, it just like kind of blew me away, that story about Asian Americans, like actually not just like happening on the East Coast, but a story set in the heartland of the United States, which is, and the same way that it is a little poignant, and then also and it's very rewarding. And I think that Wei-Lai is being played at Bentonville. I think as a festival that champions like diversity inclusions, and we're very honored to be a part of it, and especially playing at festivals that are not just on the East Coast, but also like here in Arkansas, and then playing to like a very different set of audience.
Same. Me here.
I'm curious. When I got a phone call from you, so North Carolina area code, if I'm not mistaken, is that right? Connecting that southern route, is North Carolina where you came from, Singapore?
Oh well, I grew up in China, and I went to high school in Singapore, and then I went to Duke, which is in North Carolina.
Yeah.
For undergrad.
I actually went to Oklahoma. I went to OU, so this is like just bring me back to Norman in a second. Like the moment I landed, I was like, so familiar. Like everything is so familiar.
Where my partner's from OU. He went there.
Oh, really? Nice. Sooner.
Well, I was just curious because, picking Bentonville, I felt like you were looking for a different audience. Mm-hmm. You wanted someone who would look at your film not in a particular, East or West Coast feel. And if that was important to you to see what a Southern audience would feel like.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Because I think a big part of the world, it falls into a kind of confirmation bias where we just like, where our crowd is like is watching, like films that sort of that appeal to us. And then what I think is missing is a kind of reaching across the aisle and showing films about diversity and inclusion in traditional conservative states, and then in deeper like the middle parts of the United States. I think it's a very meaningful mission, and then we're very honored to be a part of it. And I think as all human stories, there are stories that are like overlap. I love to see more Asian American stories that taking place in the Deep South as well, because I have like distant friends and family who live there, and yeah.
Well, lastly, I'd love to ask, since Minari was an influence, is there any hopes of extending this story, telling another chapter, maybe a feature? And if not that, what else are you guys working on? Obviously, USC is a pretty good school. Duke's a pretty good school. What's next for you guys?
For me, I have so many projects going on. I'm a director-producer. I just wrapped a folk horror thesis film that was set in Deep South, but we shot it in LA, and we're just like doing post for that, and we're very excited about it. My next directing project is a Sloan Foundation film that was about the 1910 Manchurian plague, and then and the events that led to the invention of the first N95 mask. It's another story about homecoming, about someone. The main character is a doctor who graduated from Cambridge University and returned home to the pre-modern China and tried to articulate the reasoning of science to otherwise very traditional, like their father's ways of practicing medicine. So it's a very very poignant story that kind of resonates with the theme of Wei-Lai as well, which is about speaking to your father generation and in a very in a very different language. So as for Wei-Lai, I think the writer is expanding that into a feature, and we'll just like keep the mystery there.
Yeah, I think the writer he already have a draft of the feature, so but none of us has read it yet, so it's kind of like a mystery. Only he knows. But yeah, so I actually just graduated from USC like last month, so it's definitely like a new chapter for me. Kind of just being like on a lot of projects. We actually have another project coming up soon next month, so this collaboration is continuing. I also been working on like a few docs since graduation, so that's definitely very different experience, but I'm in love with it. So.
Well, guys, great job on it. Bentonville wouldn't have accepted it if they didn't think it was good. So thank you guys for coming and speaking to us. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.